Staying with the theme of this evening as we build up to the President's address, it's all eyes on President Cyril Ramaphosa's address this evening. South Africa is grappling with the third wave of COVID-19. That as the number of infections is approaching the 2 million mark, with close to 60,000 deaths having been recorded. So now will government move the country to a stricter lockdown level? We have our reporter Lindsay Dentlinger, who joins us from Long Street in Cape Town. Lindsay, always a pleasure speaking to you. I do believe that even last night it was quite a buzz yesterday with law enforcement trying to just ensure that people adhere to COVID-19 regulations. Are people listening?
How long have you been doing this, Lindsay?
Well, you know that this is really the heartbeat of Cape Town's party vibe, and even for a Sunday night, I was just remarking to my guest standing here with me that it's fairly lively. We're not quite sure if that is because people fear that this might be their last chance for a while, that they get to hang out in this very popular street in the city. But what it will really mean if we are to move to a harder lockdown, I'm sure many businesses here don't want to hear any of that. With me, I have Giancarlo Bruno, who is the chairperson of the recently formed Long Street Association, specifically to revive the street. It suffered really dramatically during the lockdown. It saw the end of businesses that had been around in the street for over a decade. Giancarlo, thank you for joining us on your birthday. What would it mean if the country were to move to a harder lockdown this evening for reviving businesses in the street?
I think Long Street and the hospitality industry in general is already on its knees, and I think a further hard lockdown would be the death knell for many, many businesses, and it should be avoided at all costs if possible.
You have been doing quite a bit to try to revive Long Street after the hard lockdown of last year that saw so many businesses closing down. What have you been able to achieve in that time?
So it's obviously an extremely difficult environment at this moment. Obviously there's a third wave impending and approaching, and there will be a fourth and fifth wave given the failure of the government to roll out the vaccines. So a lot of our focus has been on creating a space which is going to be conducive to business, making sure that we beautify the area, make it safer. Our real difficulty and challenge is getting the correct operators and getting operators who are willing to come in based on those approaching fourth and fifth waves, as they will happen. We know that the vaccine rollout hasn't been what it should have been, so our real focus is more on just creating an environment which is conducive to businesses if and when they are ready to come back to Long Street.
If we are spared another hard lockdown but perhaps a stricter curfew, how much of an impact will that have on businesses here?
Well, I think we are at the absolute limit of what businesses can take at 9 p.m. I think lowering that curfew would be absolutely terrible for the hospitality industry. I think there are other measures which the government could take which would be far more friendly to business. It would really not be a good situation. So many operators are really battling.
What measures are you proposing that you say could be more useful for business?
You know, in my opinion, I think there are things that the government could do about limiting gatherings, cutting off alcohol sales possibly for longer periods during the week. And then I really think the government should be focused on enablement, getting the vaccine rollout right, and then also field hospitals building capacity to deal with the coming waves, because not just the hospitality industry, every industry has been so badly damaged, and I think the focus really has to be on how do we keep the lights on and how do we keep the doors open. So really, in summary, the government should focus on building capacity in the healthcare sector to make sure we can cope with the waves when and if they happen, and making sure that they try their best to facilitate for the industries, be they hospitality or otherwise. And I really think that government should work really hard or look at creating some sort of hospitality fund to support the businesses, because it's an entire industry which has been decimated, continues to be damaged on an ongoing basis. And it's the nature of things, so we get that, we understand that government has to make hard decisions. But on the other side of the coin, they could have done much more to support the industry.
Thank you very much for your time. Giancarlo Bruno of the Long Street Association saying that government can do more in other sectors, in other spheres to fight this pandemic, and that it needn't all come down to shutting down businesses that are so desperate to keep their doors open.